About a week ago, we found out what really happened during the Jasper fire and whose fault it really was. The answer probably won't surprise you. Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. Guilbeault appeared before the Environment Committee last week and gave testimony regarding the Jasper fire. Let's go to that committee and see what went on.
In the evening of July 22nd of this year, a lightning storm sparked 4 wildfires near the Jasper town site. By 10 p.m., an evacuation order had been issued for Jasper National Park. In just a few hours, more than 20,000 people have been safely evacuated without any casualties. As fires merged, a wall of fire nearly 300 meters wide set across the southern valley in which the town of Jasper is found, projecting fiery pine cones, snap treetops, and branches up to a kilometer ahead of the fire. Les pompiers de Parcs Canada,
firefighters from Parks Canada, Jasper, Alberta Wildfire, and dozens of towns across the country fought heroically to save homes, schools, and the hospital. But there was no stopping this fire, and no forest was going to escape its path. Homes and infrastructure were damaged, and people's lives and businesses were changed forever. The full recovery of the community will take time, and Parks Canada is already working with the municipality of Jasper to ensure the sustainable reconstruction of the city. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the collaborative efforts that have been put in place over the recent decades to prevent firefighters and mitigate the risks of them in Jasper and across the country.
And Indigenous partners have worked together for almost 30 years to reduce known wildfire risks in Jasper National Park and around the town, making it one of the most fires-prepared and resilient communities in Canada. Parks Canada has used prescribed fires for 4 decades, including 15 in the last 10 years at Jasper National Park, to reduce the risk of wildfire to national park communities and to enhance ecosystem functioning. Millions of dollars have been invested in the battle against pine beetle, removing fuel sources from built areas, and establishing a fire break around the town site. Fire Smart Canada's best practices have been implemented in Jasper National Park, and in fact, they've been largely inspired by the work that has been developed in Jasper. The Government of Canada has invested in Jasper National Park for wildfire risk reduction activities such as vegetation management to reduce wildfire risks to people, infrastructure, and assets. The total area treated in Jasper National Park since 2014 is approximately 1,700 hectares. However, devastating the fire was, Parks Canada response and preparedness ensure that it was not much worse. We're seeking to ensure barriers to the sustainable reconstruction of the Jasper community are removed.
Now, before we move on, I just wanted to address a couple of things he said. He was talking about rebuilding a sustainable Jasper. I found that to be kind of curious. Like, why would he throw in the sustainable? Now, I understand he's the environment minister, and that sustainability is what he is all about. You would think, however, that would not need to be said, that all towns have to be sustainable. What exactly is he meaning by sustainable? And was Jasper not sustainable prior to the fire? I just found his words a little bit odd there. And as somebody with a suspicious mind, I wonder if he's not happy. He has an opportunity to rebuild it in his model of sustainability. But again, I do have a suspicious mind. The other thing I wanted to point out is he talked a lot about the fire mitigation steps that had been taken by the Jasper National Park and by the town of Jasper. But we will see shortly that wasn't enough, and that Environment Canada had been warned that what they had been doing in Jasper was not enough. So all of this is a little bit suspicious, if you ask me. Let's go to the questions and let's find out exactly what the real experts are saying.
This meeting is about the events that led to the fire. With nearly $1 billion in damage, 1/3 of Jasper destroyed, 800 housing units gone, leaving 2,000 residents homeless out of a population of 5,000, businesses reduced to ashes, upending lives and livelihoods. Yes or no? Does the government accept responsibility for the failure to protect the people and the town of Jasper?
Merci pour la question. Peut-être que pour vous donner une idée de...
Thank you for that question. Perhaps I could give you a sense of what has been done over recent years. If you could look at the funding invested since the time when Stephen Harper was in power, $2 million were invested in 2014, 2015 to prevent wildfires. Just to prevent forest fires in 2022, 2023, it was $4.4 million. So this is double than what was spent under the previous government. But we did not stop there. Since 2020, $6.9 million were invested. Two pieces of information to provide, $6.9 million just to address infestations and remove dead wood since 2020, and $79 million since 2023. So we have invested at a rate almost triple that of the previous government.
What I find really curious about his answers here is he harkens back to the Harper government and blames them for not putting out enough money. But it's been 10 years. I don't know if you know, but forests on average back before there was human intervention would burn on average once every 7 years or so. So his pointing out that Harper only spent $2 million when he spent all of these other millions, like 3 times as much, doesn't really make a lot of sense here. I mean, what is he trying to actually say? And another thing, he's responding to these questions in French. And you will see that he will choose who to respond in English to and who to respond in French to, which is very curious because if you have command of the language that you're asked the question in, it is typical that you respond in that language. And his English is almost perfect. So why isn't he responding in English? Well, it turns out that he will respond to some people in English, but the Conservatives, he will often respond in French. And I think that has a lot to say about his character. He's purposely responding in French to be a little bit obstinate. But that's just my observation. And I don't know if it's a real valid observation or not, but that's my take on it.
You know, you have been quoted by saying years of preparation and forest management paid off. Yet a third of the town is gone. You know, $1 billion in devastation. 2,000 people are now homeless. So you're telling me this preparation is paying off. Minister, if this is an example of preparation and success, what does failure look like?
Si on n'avait pas fait tout ce travail-là, et quand
Well, if we hadn't put in all of these efforts, and when I say we, this is Parks Canada, the City of Jasper, the Government of Alberta, and Indigenous peoples. If all of this work had not been done in order to create a protective zone around the city, the impacts would have been far worse.
Saying this Fire Smart is a national program inspired by Jasper, and this is what you've said, and I quote, "What we do around the country to protect the towns and cities was inspired largely by what we've been doing in Jasper." So I have to ask, if Jasper is the model for towns in proximity to forests, should we expect that a third of a town that is burnt to the ground? Is this the new national standard where only a third of a town burns and you consider this success? Is that your new plan?
Yes, the Fire Smart is a program used by municipalities throughout the country. What needs to be done is acknowledge the fact that we are dealing with natural disasters that we've never dealt with before. Take atmospheric rivers, for example, in the West Coast, heat waves, floods on the East Coast. And there will be others. We do need to do more to protect ourselves. I agree with you, with the member on that. Towns and cities located near fires may be affected by forest fires, but the Fire Smart program is used throughout the country, and it is something that we will continue to work on.
Your government first warned about the reality of a catastrophic fire in Jasper.
I have demonstrated to you already that what our government has done. Your government invested $2 million. Our government invested almost $80 million to prevent forest fires. $2 million, $80 million. That's the difference between you and us. And I understand that more needs to be done. I understand that. I'm the first to acknowledge that. When a notification went out, my team acted.
Yellowhead, Jim Iglinski brought forward on the floor of the House of Commons in 2017 to the Environment Minister then, said they take this serious issue very seriously. Then in 2018, Jasper Park Superintendent said Parks Canada takes this issue very seriously. Once again, nothing done. In 2018, 2 professional foresters wrote to the previous environmental minister saying this is not a matter of if, but when the town of Jasper will burn. Your government didn't even respond. Time and time again, you say you take this very seriously, how forests are going to be protected and towns are going to be protected, but yet no action. Does the government accept responsibility for the failure to protect the people in the town of Jasper? Yes or no?
We invested about 40 times as much as this Harper government in order to prevent forest fires in Jasper.
We'll go now to Mr. CALKINS. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, you were asked earlier a very specific question by my colleague, Mr. SOROKA, about when you were first briefed. When were you briefed about the gravity of the situation of the potential for a catastrophic fire in Jasper National Park, including the Jasper town site? When? I want a date, Minister. This is something that would stick in the memory of somebody if you were about to lose, a heritage site park. You would know when you had that conversation. When were you briefed?
En fait, j'ai commencé à recevoir.
I started receiving briefing notes, and again, as I noted, I spoke to the mayor of Jasper even before the situation deteriorated. I don't have the dates before me, but I can certainly provide them. I don't have my date planner with me, but I did have conversations with Parks Canada representatives even before people were evacuated, as I noted.
After you with the mayor and after you had those conversations, did you direct your staff at Parks Canada to accelerate their fire preparedness for Jasper? Yes or no?
Vous savez, je ne sais pas comment vous envisagez le travail de...
I don't know how you imagine a minister's job works, and I don't know if you'll understand my answer, but it is not the minister's job to micromanage 4,000 Parks Canada employees and tell them how to do their jobs. I'm not a forest fire expert.
It comes from the top, Minister. The tone comes from the top.
Hey, please.
The tone comes from the top, Minister. I know
the-
very well how it works, Minister, because while you were planning your next escapade to jump off of the CN Tower
Point
or
of
the
order, Mr.
trespass
Chair.
on the Premier's house, I
Point
was
of order,
actually
Mr.
at
Chair.
Park Park in Jasper
I'm
National Park.
stopping the time.
I was there on the ground.
Point of
Stopping the
order,
time.
Mr.
This is
Chair.
not- I'm stopping the time. If the minister's asked the question, I would like him to have the chance to respond and succinctly. And I found the tone was getting a little too aggressive, Mr. Calkins, to be honest with you. But anyway, well, let's start again. Well, we could debate that till the cows come home, I'm sure. But let's start over. We're not going to start over. We're going to resume the clock, and we'll see how it goes. Okay.
There's no indication, Minister, that Parks Canada has changed or significantly changed its fire preparedness policy in any way, shape, or form with the matter of prescribed burns in order for fire prevention. When I was a warden in Jasper, and that's what I did in the 90s when I worked for Alberta Parks and National Parks Canada, I could see what was happening with the parks policy. I could see the removal of the roads for fire suppression, and the policy has shifted, and it hasn't changed one bit. The pine beetle comes along, it changes the entire landscape. You have the ability, Minister, to change the policy, set the direction, and set the tone. You had the Excelsior fire in 2015. Residents were worried. They came together. Experts from BC came. All the work that was done in collaboration with the government of Alberta. Everybody said they weren't ready. The fire chief in Jasper National Park was asking for more trailers for sprinklers. They were asking to update the water systems. They were asking the residents, 200 of them came to a town hall in the fire hall, asking to remove that deadfall. You claim that you've spent millions and millions of dollars and you've only removed a couple of hectares of this stuff. This is dead standing pine. It's the driest, most easily burnable, hot burning wood that there is. And you've done nothing. There is nothing here. But I do have this. I have from Jonah Mitchell a response to Melanie Kwong at Parks Canada that says, at what point do we make the organizational decision to cancel planned prescribed burns in Western Canada as more and more media articles raise public concern, public and political perception may become more important than actual prescription windows? This is what your organization is doing, and you're not giving them the direction, and that lies with you, Minister. You're responsible for that. When are you going to take responsibility for the $1 billion of damage that happened in Jasper? Everybody knew this was coming. Everybody knew it, and you were told. And yet here we are, $1 billion worth of assets burned down, and our beautiful Jasper National Park, where I used to work,
why don't we give
is laying in ruins.
Why don't we give the minister a chance to provide some answers?
Ben, il y a beaucoup de choses qui ont changé depuis.
One, lots has changed since you worked at Parks Canada. You spoke about the 1980s. A great deal was done since the 80s.
Well, he actually said the 1990s. I'm not sure if that makes much of a difference, but 10 years could be significant. But what's really interesting here is he spoke about the pine beetle infestation and the standing dead pine and how that changed the entire landscape of the situation. And of course, Stephen Guilbeault does not address that. He blames Harper for not doing enough, but he doesn't address the fact that the entire landscape had changed since Harper. I think that's a significant factor to point out.
You spoke about a sprinkler system, and my colleague spoke about the investments that led to this system. You spoke about wood that needed to be removed. We carried out the removal through both prescribed burns and manual removal. I am the first to recognize that we need to do more to protect ourselves against climate change, unlike the conservatives who bury their heads in the ground and say that climate change doesn't exist and has no impact in Canada.
What have you got to say about this memo? Why are the prescribed burns, and why are your staff talking about cancelling fire prescribed burns for the sake of media optics? Has this ever been brought to your attention, Minister?
So yeah, as both those employees work directly for me, I'd love to take this question in the fact that what they were doing was looking at the difference between prescribed burns and mechanical removal. So we're communities. We had just had the mayor of Fort Smith and their council talk to us and say they weren't comfortable with prescribed burns. We just had Banff talk to us that they weren't happy with prescribed burns. We had articles coming out all across the country. So two of my managers, which is, I think, a good thing for people to do, is to look at different options that they have. Two of them were saying, do we do prescribed burns or do we do mechanical removal? It was not that there would be doing nothing. It was the choice between mechanical removal or prescribed burns. You can take things out of context, which they have been, but that was what the conversation was about.
So I actually worked in Banff for 6 years, I believe it was, back in the 90s and at the turn of the millennium. And there were a few prescribed burns during that time, and there were the aftermaths of previous prescribed burns. So this gentleman is saying that they're discussing whether they should use prescribed burns or mechanical removal of the dead trees and the deadfall. And I understand the concerns of the locals. You don't want to be exposed to the smoke. I would suggest, though, that it's probably a combination of both that you'd have to deal with. You'd have to do the mechanical removal, but you'd have to still do the prescribed burns. You might wonder, well, how are we going to do all of this mechanical removal? Isn't prescribed burns a lot more efficient? And I would suggest that, yes, they probably are. However, guess what we have that we didn't have back in the Harper days? We have millions of illegal immigrants. Maybe they should earn their way into Canada by doing some of this mechanical removal. Just a suggestion. Probably a little bit too radical for these leftists, but I would say it's a possibility. So this video is getting fairly lengthy. I don't want to drag it out too much longer. I will say that I'm not really impressed with Stephen Guilbeault's answers on this, and he does seem to be fairly hostile from the beginning, only answering the Conservatives in French, while he is completely fluent in English, and he will answer other questions, such as from the NDP, in English. He has plenty of opportunity to speak in French. There are French members of this committee who are asking questions in French, but I think it shows his contempt for the Conservatives. So one of the questions that brings to mind is this incompetence? Is this negligence? Or is there something more diabolical happening here? He ignored all of the warning signs. Did he even care that Jasper was going to burn? And was it an opportunity for him to institute some sort of nefarious plan to create his idea of a futuristic, sustainable city? Maybe I'm just paranoid, but a lot of what the Liberals do seem to me to be a little bit questionable. And knowing how corrupt they are, I just wouldn't put anything past them. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time for a live stream where you can join in on the conversation. Finally, I do have a lot of links to my social media in the description of this video, including a link to my website where you can sign up for the Canadian Firearm Safety course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.